This may become a second video, we'll see, but let's talk about the Pathfinder Remaster. I'm going to put it up on the screen. What is the Remaster, Sean?
So the Remaster is, depending on who you ask, either Pathfinder 2.5 or 3 erratas that are just happening to come out in the same year.
And I'm going to call it 2.1, even though I think these version numbers are stupid. I think it is the most faithful,
way of saying it. Yeah.
Pithy way to express it. But
so
go ahead.
Basically, Pathfinder 2.1. They're basically taking important content from the past bunch of the game, putting them into just like 4 books, and saying that's it. So we're going to have Player Core 1, which will be basically the equivalent of the Player's Handbook, which will include,
I'm going to get my books.
A lot of the basic classes, and then there will be Core 2, which will include a lot of the more advanced classes, and those will be coming out over the course of the next year or so. We will then also be getting a new game mastery guide, which will include more details on free archetype from what I've heard.
Oh, I just bonked my cat in the head with the book.
Oops. And we're also going to get a bestiary that removes a lot of the problematic or OGL creatures and replaces them with new stuff or stuff from bestiaries 2 and 3.
Yeah.
To form a new core book that the rest of the game can be built off of. But fundamentally, not much will change for existing characters unless they are reliant very heavily on alignment like Champion is, or specifically Oracle, Alchemist, Witch, because those are the 3 classes that are getting many reworks.
I think it makes sense to read through this and say what we think about every point. You don't know. I'm looking at the Pathfinder 2e Remaster Megathread at the top of that's the sticky on the Pathfinder 2e subreddit. But
I'll visit the Pathfinder 2e subreddit. I have not checked the subreddit all day.
Okay, so basically, they want an easier entry point than the chunky 640-page book. That's one reason why they're doing this. They're basically moving some material into the game, what would be the game GM core book. So some of this will go into that. And also, the Advanced Player's Guide introduced some classes. They're putting the more complex classes in Player Core 2. And Player Core 1 would be like the base, here's your first book to get.
But funnily enough, they're also moving Sorcerer and Barbarian to Player Core 2, which I know has been controversial.
Ah, okay.
And they do have the reasons for that, but we can get to that later.
Yeah, I think they want to keep the first book slim, and so much of the page count is just like all of the options you have for a class, so I think they kind of have to divide it in 2. So I'm looking, viewers can see this, maybe Sean can't, I don't know. But, okay, GM Core and Player Core set to release this November. Player Core 1 has the following 8 classes: Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Witch, and Wizard. So you have your Core 4, plus the Bard, Druid, and Ranger. And the Witch is kind of sneaking in there. I'm not sure why.
Witch is getting a rework soon. So
okay.
That's going to be reworked.
I guess they want to rush it out the door because the next Player Core 2 comes out next July of 2024. Yep. The Ancestries are the same as the core rulebook we see today, plus the leshy and orc. They're embracing the orc because this will be the first. One of the reasons why this is being published is to move away from the OGL. They're saying that it's a way to no longer be reliant on Wizards of the Coast, not trying to screw everybody. And so they're representing the rules under the Orc license that is still being worked on. Also, versatile heritages will show up in Player Core 1. Changeling and Nephilim. Nephilim is, extraplanar?
Anything extraplanar. So the consensus right now seems to be that it's going to be a combination of, like, Tiefling, Asmar, and a lot of the other outer planar stuff. It just merged into one, just thrown in. Okay,
and for those not familiar with Pathfinder 2e, when you choose your ancestry or race coming from 5e, you get make a choice of your heritage, which many of them are like sub-races from 5e. They're like a type of elf, a type of dwarf. But you can choose not to get an elf heritage for your elf and graft in tiefling, Asimar, or changeling. Those are called versatile heritages, and it unlocks a whole nother list of feats, and you get an ancestry feat at level 1. So you can have your fire resistance at level 1 while being a goblin.
Yeah.
Okay, monster core. I honestly don't know what... okay, it says 8 brand new dragons.
Yes, and I know why they did that change.
Because of... What? Go ahead.
Because currently the game relies on, for its core dragons, the 5 chromatic dragons, which are a very uniquely D&D thing, and the 5 metallic dragons, which are, again, a uniquely D&D thing. And they're trying to make a break from the D&D-like stuff that is uniquely to their fantasy. So they're going to have 4 good dragons and 4 evil dragons for each tradition of magic. So it'll be an arcane, occult, primal, and divine dragon for both good and evil.
Interesting.
Or good and evil, because alignment is also being removed.
Yeah, so they're also moving away from the 3x3 alignment grid and embracing the magic traditions that are part of the default way magic works in Pathfinder.
Yep.
And
this
also
ties into rules elements better.
Yeah. Also, a lot of the what do I want to say? A lot of the product identity monsters like Optiug and but other things, they want to either change the name or release something similar thematically to it. Player Core 2 has the remaining classes from the core rulebook and current advanced player's guide, namely the alchemist, which was, I think it was unfortunate it was the first class a lot of people opened the Pathfinder 2e rulebook to, because it's also the most complex class they've ever released to date.
And I think it's also the class that's
most complex to play.
From core design, because everything it does is resource based. It doesn't have a people attack.
Yeah.
It's very strange in that regard.
Yeah. Also, barbarian, champion, investigator, monk, oracle, sorcerer, and swashbuckler. There is a step up in complexity with these, maybe not with the monk or barbarian, but overall, it looks... I'm imagining there's also supplemental material in the back behind the classes that they thought would fit better with the first core classes and the second book of core classes.
So they specifically moved sorcerer back, so that sorcerer and kobold were in the same book.
Why?
Because they wanted it to combine with specific ancestries there.
Okay.
So they pushed a lot of those back for the sake of there are now ancestries that synergize with them.
Okay.
So you can kind of look at these and kind of go, okay, I can see that they pushed this thing, common class, back, so that there'd be this thing that would be comboed with it.
Okay. All right. The Ancestries, I think, are everything we see from the Advanced Player's Guide plus Gnoll.
And I remember reading that Gnoll will be renamed.
Yeah, to Kholo, Kholo.
Which is the Gnoll's name for themselves.
Okay. Yeah, lizardfolk and hobgoblin, I think, come from one of the very early Lost Omens books. So already there's a wider array of ancestries between these two books than in core plus APG right now. More versatile heritage, namely Dhampir, Duskwalker, and an all-new heritage that we have not announced. Okay, the books will have special and pocket editions, and okay, this is basically if you have an existing subscription, you might want to suspend it. Another cool thing that's about let's talk about the edition number at the end. Okay. The remaster is removing, reskinning, and replacing OGL materials with original orc materials. Alignment is going away, replacing alignment with edicts and anathemas, holy and unholy damage. What do we think about that?
I personally like the change.
I do too.
I feel like alignment a lot of the time is just kind of thing that people either write down their sheet or use it to dictate every single one of their actions. And it restricts character concepts for champions a lot, particularly. Because champion is the only one with like that type of requirement, champions and clerics. But they already have the Edict Anathema, which is a far more interesting mechanic than alignment for determining how your character views the world. So that's being replaced.
Yeah. While teaching my middle schoolers and other people new to the game, who are new to Dungeons and Dragons and games derived from it, it's always the last thing I talk about. It's always this thing I
Yeah.
forget. Like, oh, pick an alignment, and I have to explain it.
Yeah.
And good and evil people are familiar with, but people are not so familiar with the law chaos divide, which when you look at the origins of D&D, there actually wasn't good and evil alignments. You chose to be lawful, neutral, or chaotic, and there's a whole different idea that was not... many adventuring parties were evil by today's standards. You just like...
Definitely.
And what being lawful meant was you were civilized, quote unquote, and you went against the heathens and barbarians out there, and law and civilization needed to push back the darkness, and you can see problems in that whole idea, that worldview. But that was the idea, and yeah, it's something that not many people know or understand who are entering fantasy nowadays. So yeah, I don't see it. I see it being vestigial, and maybe I'll miss a few mechanics and interactions, but apparently they're going to keep holy and unholy. So it's going to be the new good and evil. Yeah, but not law and chaos. Law and chaos will go away. On anathemas, I think it's kind of cool to, like, there's some cool anathemas and edicts, like Caden Kalian, that god. And you're not supposed to let alcohol go to waste. These are, like...
And I also think that,
more flavorful to me.
Anathema and edicts can be applied to a lawful character very, very well, but if you want to follow him and get powers from him, you need to be chaotic neutral or chaotic evil. So I think that is a perfect example of a deity that will then be more freed up by this change.
Yeah, it's kind of is a value judgment that the designers have to make, the whole alignment system. It's like saying, I'm just going to read it out. Gorum. Edict. Attain victory in fair combat. Push your limits. Wear armor. And anathema to kill prisoners or surrender foes. And you're about battle, strength, and weapons. And none of the followers can be good aligned.
None of the followers can be good aligned. None of the followers can be lawful. None of the followers can even be neutral.
Okay,
you all need to be chaotic. You all need to be chaotic neutral or chaotic evil. Okay,
I think this is also just an error, actually. I don't know if this was a good example. That should have had good and lawful be available. But what I was expecting to see was anyone who's for resolving through force cannot be good. Some kind of, value judgment that's very contextual. You can't really assign a label. It's like
declared Raphael is not good.
It's like when people argue, I'm still good aligned, I'm just doing what's necessary to meet the greater goal. I mean, anyway, the whole idea that something is not anyway, we can go on and on about it. That's why it's going away, because the arguments can go on forever.
And also, I just want to give one last thing about the mechanical implications of this. With holy and unholy damage, true neutral is no longer the min-max alignment.
Yes, I hate that too. I have a lot of players who play in my private, a lot of the younger people who play my private campaigns, they're all like, oh, I'll just be neutral. They're much more, optimization focused, and it's very, I
do not like you have to be true neutral if you are going to fight demons, because if you're good aligned in fighting demons, now they do more damage to you. It's like...
Yeah. Very good. Goodbye. Okay. Tiefling and Aasimar are replaced by Nephilim. I don't know that word. I wish I knew it. I'll learn a new word.
Half angel, half human, basically, if you want to look at the biblical type stuff. But in modern fantasy, it usually just means outer, planar, weird. Like magic touched, usually divine, sometimes not.
Okay. Now, these 4 classes are getting remastered. Let's talk about why they might be remastered. Alchemist is too fiddly. It's too hard for a new player. It is...
Everything it does is resource-based. It doesn't have reliable auto-attack of some kind.
Yeah, and for people who... some people think it's underpowered. I don't know if it is, but it's not straightforward how best to play it.
I believe that it is not underpowered. It is just very situational of where it is on power with everything else. And you need to know what that situation is, and it relies on a party comp to figure out what that is. So there isn't just like one guide to read how to play an alchemist. You need to figure out how to play alchemist with your party members. It's
like playing a high-skill deck building game like Slay the Spire, where you're given no guide and you're supposed to figure out all the synergies yourself.
Out by yourself, and also you need to get your allies to get in on your synergy, or you are weaker than you're expected to be. So now that you need to convince your allies to go along with your plan.
Okay,
which is
Champions getting remastered, and obviously one reason for that is because they're moving away from alignment. Right now, your core subclass is based on your alignment choice. Yep. I'm not sure what else. Maybe I'm pretty
sure it's just the alignment thing.
Am I right that it's more like you're not choosing an alignment, but you're choosing some edicts or something, and that you have some ability tied with that?
So alignment will be replaced by just like additional edicts and anathemas.
That's kind of cool because they won't be limited to 6. They can just come up with stuff.
So they can just be like, you can be a lawful neutral paladin at that point, and you can just like swear the paladin oath of like all the law and stuff, and then instead of following tenets of good, you'd have some other thing that you're doing.
Okay, and maybe it could be more fun and thematic if it's more narrow. Like, I wonder what a Caden Kalian, the god of being drunk, reaction would be.
We'll see. I doubt they're going to go that far.
Okay.
Each god of their own champion reaction. That's a little far. I like the spirit.
Yeah, but okay, let's just say that's an extreme, probably not what they'll do, but more the direction of being more specific.
So I think that my prediction, this is based off of nothing but my own thoughts, is they're probably going to remove the alignment restrictions on them because alignment's going away. Replace all the instances of good damage with holy or unholy, just because that's how alignment damage is being replaced. And each oath will have its edicts unchanged, and the deity edicts will be there. And then you can then, in addition, do an alignment edict if you want. Mm-hmm. That's how I imagine that'll play out.
Okay. All right, Oracle. I don't know. It is more complicated than other classes, but I don't know if it's too complicated. I'm not sure why.
Concerns, for one, because I know that's something very commonly complained about on the subreddit and in the community at large. 2, there's going to be minor rework of focus spells.
Oh, okay. I read something about it being easier to get focus back.
That's what I heard. I have not read enough to be able to confirm or deny. But I think that it's a combination of those two things. Okay.
All right. So I don't know how much will change, but I'm going to guess that all of these involve some changes to the core mechanics.
Yes.
Maybe you won't play drastically differently, but it requires basically, it's not just a patch. It's something else.
Yep.
And the witch, which I know some have said is not powerful enough.
Yep. And I also remember hearing, and this is just hearsay because I've not actually watched the stream in too much detail, but I have heard them say that it's because a lot of people felt disappointed that the patron did not matter enough, and that it really didn't feel like you had a patron, it felt like you had a familiar.
I think that is pretty accurate, I think if they're more flavorful, like 5e pacts or whatever.
Yeah, finding how do you build what boons your warlock would give you, which I think is a very good approach. So I heard them all saying that they're going to do some changes to how hex cantrips work to put more of the power budget back into the witch themselves rather than the familiar.
Yeah, that all sounds right to me. Because right now it's just wizard with familiar
Right
plus.
Now it's wizard with familiar pact, but fewer spell slots. And that's just worse than wizard with familiar pact.
Yeah. Okay. Rage of Elements. This year's book will have these updated rules. Yay. Wizard will be proficient in simple weapons, and rogues will be proficient in martial weapons. That is nice. It makes it more... Anyway, rogues were proficient with martial weapons in original D&D. So this is going back to its roots. So anyway, you're still incentivized to do finesse weapons to the way sneak attack works. So that seems like a plus. Yep. Wizard will lose a little flavor at being the suckiest at weapons, but then, I don't know, being weaker than sorcerer felt bad when it came to weapons.
Now you can actually use an ancestral weapon feat to have a wizard with a dog slicer.
Okay.
That's cool. I think that should still be a thing that you are able to do on wizards, I think that if you are a dwarven wizard, you should be able to take the ancestry feat and then have a gun. And have a gun dwarf wizard.
Yeah, you're right. We need to have gun wizards. Yes, I am completely convinced.
Like, I'm just saying, this loves gun wizards.
Yeah,
So
and right now it just operates as a feat tax. You have to
yeah,
take a general feat before you can get simple weapons, and then
and
another
also
feat for martial weapons. Blah.
rogues getting all martial weapons means that they now have access to shurikens. Meaning
They
now
don't
the
have
rogues
them
can.
now?
They didn't have shurikens by default previously. You need to
Insane.
either write your GM a 500-word essay on actually their common Tanzia, so you can unconventional weaponry on human, or go through a long thing of monk feats to get scaling proficiency in shurikens.
Ability scores will be removed, replaced by modifiers.
Good
Yay.
change. About time.
My only question is, how are you supposed to track when you're
How are you supposed to track the plus 4.5 when you're at 18 versus 19? Is
I
my
think it just
concern.
becomes 4.5 because or
I
otherwise you'll forget it.
I personally, and this is like really, really on my out there juice, is
Out
we
there
have all
juice.
these my out there theory juice.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no way they're going to do this because it would mess up the math of the game to our high levels. But they could remove Apex items and just say it goes up by 1 every time. I think that'd screw a lot of the math of the game up.
I think it should be 4 plus, so that people are
Yeah.
not confused by the decimal. Just 4. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see how they do it. I'm sure they'll find some elegant way to do it. And if they don't,
Yeah,
we get to
but
laugh at them.
I remember teaching my middle school students and be like, okay, you have your numbers now, but now you got to refer to a chart because it sucked. Okay,
Yeah.
spell levels replaced by spell rank. Thank you. I like that. However, I'm not sure I like the word rank.
I'm fine with the word rank. I mean, I've heard other people throw out like other terms because this has been an argument for longer than I've been playing Pathfinder. Even like D&D circles because nobody liked over there either. And I heard like spell circles say go, oh, I'm a wizard that's capable of casting 7th circle spells, but that always felt like wacky to me.
The other word for me was tier, but I guess they wanted to also double for the counteract mechanic, which also is goes up every 2 levels. So maybe it'll be a counteract rank.
So then that'll be the counteract rank of the spell, and the counteract rank of an item is calculated this way.
Yeah.
I really like that change for that reason. And now I'm very, very on board, more than I was.
Yeah, and I assume they just haven't mentioned it yet. But yeah, essentially the counteract level in the current game is essentially the same as spell level.
Spell level. So if they just say rank for both, and now suddenly we have a word that refers to one thing instead of a word that refers to 3 different things that are somewhat related.
So rank may be the best word. I'm just going to say I'm not sure it is. And I want it to function for both those purposes.
Soul Cage has grown on me over the years, so I'll trust it.
Refocusing, you'll get focus points back easier. And I'll link the links to the 2 live streams that are about this. What do we think of the edition number? Second edition
this
remastered.
Is a large errata. Because, like, if people were really going to start calling it 2.5, I think that we need to see a fundamental rework of some core system in order for me to be comfortable calling it that. But characters level up the same, feats work the same, stats are basically going to be generally the same.
I'm going to sound a bit like a hypocrite because in some videos I say that the next D&D should just be called 6th edition. And I have another video saying don't call it 5.5 because if it's a revision, you just call it the next edition. Part of my argument was that, we need to get away from this idea that a new edition number, a new whole number, requires you start from scratch and just completely revise your game. Let's take the stigma away from a new edition. And however, I don't think it makes sense to call this anyway. I think it's fair to say that this is still 2nd edition because of the level of change. Some have said 2.5, but if you look at the changes, I don't know how familiar you are with it, Sean, between 3.0 and 3.5.
My familiarity can be 0.
Okay.
For all intents and purposes.
But, I mean, there were significant changes. I'm not thinking of things off the top of my head. Maybe people can say it in the comments, but damage reduction saw significant changes. A lot of spells were just completely rewritten or they were too powerful, so they were changed. And then you had Pathfinder 1E, which was called 3.75. by the community. I think that had more changes than this also. You had a lot of classes get more features, and a lot of a lot of skills get consolidated. That went, I don't know, I'm just shooting numbers, guesstimates. They went from like 30 skills to 20 skills, like core things. Anyway, so I'm thinking of calling
fundamentally change how the game works for every character.
Yeah,
These are changing individual options, which in my mind is just like a really big errata balance patch, rather than something that would even qualify. But like if they did something major, like change the way the action system works, change the way reactions work, or change how spells work as a whole, or something along those lines, then I'd be happy taking up a 0.5 at the end of it.
Yeah, I don't see anything from the core rulebook, from everything I've read so far, that you couldn't use under Remastered, with the exception of alignment changes.
Alignment and whatever the new classes reworks turn out to be, because we don't know how in-depth those will be yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm inclined to call it 2.1 because it's it's more of an errata. It's more of going after the original the unchanged goals of, well, what should I say? I feel like there's just Eric Mona in the stream I saw was even saying many of you don't need this book, he said. If you are you're gonna go do just fine with the core rulebook, the current series of core books, and for little things you can check out Archives of Nethys, where the remastered rules will be. And it just doesn't strike me as like hiding anything, and so I'm less at war with how they're naming it, I think, is the way to describe why I initially look like a hypocrite. And I'm just
I think that, like,
yeah,
to compare it to what D&D 1 did is they completely
you mean 1 D&D?
The first thing, 1 D&D, or what, however community has,
which it's no longer 1 D&D anymore, it's 5th edition.
If the 5 point whatever that thing is, okay, whatever people are calling it now, if we look at what they did in their very first one, they completely changed the way feats would function in the game. They completely changed the way backgrounds exist in the game.
They made feats default.
So, like, they changed so much that instantly struck me as a 5.5 thing, where nothing here really makes me think this isn't the same game anymore. Yeah,
and they were simultaneously telling people, like, all your books, all of the 5th edition books you love, will still keep buying our books. Don't stop buying our books today.
We could have looked at what they were saying, changing just that document, and said, okay, so now they've released 30 pages, and 30 pages of my core rulebook have stopped working. Yeah. So anyway, I'm calling it 2.1. Yep.